The evening air was heavy with tension as the family gathered in the grand living room, the kind of room that looked perfect in magazines but felt suffocating when secrets hung in the air. At the center of it all was the father-in-law, a man whose pride could fill the room even louder than his booming voice. He sat with a stern expression, believing he held the reins of the family, convinced that every decision big or small was his to make. But tonight, there was a storm brewing beneath his confident exterior, a storm that none of them fully realized yet. Across from him, his daughter-in-law moved quietly, calm but alert, watching every subtle gesture, every flicker of arrogance, knowing that one wrong move from him could ignite a chain of events nobody could stop. The son sat uneasily between them, torn between loyalty to the man who raised him and the woman who had become his world. Something was about to happen, something so consequential that it would forever alter the balance of this family, and yet, in that moment, the father-in-law couldn't see it coming. What could go so wrong that one man's stubbornness would become his undoing? That question lingered in the air like a shadow, drawing viewers in, compelling them to watch. Because when pride meets miscalculation, the fallout is never just personal, it's explosive. As the scene unfolds, you'll see the story from every angle, from the calculated patience of the daughter-in-law to the overconfidence of the father-in-law, and you'll realize that in this family, one final mistake could change everything.
The day began like any other, but the air in the house carried a subtle tension, almost as if it sensed the storm ahead. The father-in-law, Mr. Harrison, stepped into the living room with his usual confidence, his polished shoes clicking against the wooden floor. He scanned the room, nodding approvingly at the decor he had helped choose years ago, a silent reminder that his taste still ruled this house. His son, Daniel, was quietly helping his wife, Emily, with the groceries, trying to keep peace, while Emily noticed the slightest twitch in Mr. Harrison's eye, a sign that his judgment, sharp as it was, could turn critical at any moment. The father-in-law's mind already buzzed with plans for the evening. He would discuss the upcoming family investments and property decisions, all with the subtle undertone that his advice was non-negotiable. But Emily, patient and observant, had learned to read between his words, understanding that his authority often disguised insecurity. She carried herself with grace, never confrontational, yet always aware, knowing the tiniest misstep could escalate into a family feud. As Mr. Harrison began outlining his plans, Daniel tried to interject gently, sensing Emily's discomfort, but the father-in-law waved him off, dismissing his concerns as youthful naivety. Emily smiled politely, letting the conversation flow, but her mind was already analyzing the situation, noting weaknesses in his argument, plotting subtle countermeasures. The tension was like a taut string, ready to snap, and just as Mr. Harrison leaned back, certain of his control, the first small spark of what would become his final mistake was quietly ignited, unnoticed by him, but deeply felt by Emily. Will this spark grow into something unstoppable, or can the family weather it? Stay tuned, because the real storm is just beginning.
The interference had started subtly. Mr. Harrison began inserting himself into every decision, offering opinions that sounded like advice but carried the weight of command. Emily noticed him, questioning the way she managed the household, subtly criticizing small choices like the timing of dinner or the organization of bills. Daniel, caught in the middle, felt torn. He loved his father but also respected his wife. The friction grew, quietly tension building, like a pressure cooker. Emily, knowing confrontation would only escalate, matters chose patience. She observed Mr. Harrison carefully, noting his tendencies to overstep and how he underestimated her insight. She knew she couldn't stop him outright, so she began planting seeds of awareness, steering conversations, subtly letting him think his ideas were being acknowledged while she maintained control behind the scenes. The father-in-law, unaware, reveled in what he thought was his influence. He even started planning a surprise for the family, a move he believed would solidify his position as the ultimate authority. But Emily foresaw potential pitfalls. Every action he took, every instruction he issued created openings for consequences he hadn't considered. And as he delivered a lecture on managing the family's investments, completely ignoring Emily's quiet corrections, the room's atmosphere grew heavier. The cracks in his carefully maintained facade were beginning to show. Could his pride blind him to reality? Will Emily's subtle strategies be enough to counteract his interference? You won't want to miss the moment. When control begins to slip, the warning signs weak passed, and the interference escalated. Mr. Harrison began meddling with business decisions, believing his experience was superior to all. He dismissed Emily's suggestions, confident that his years of wisdom made him infallible. Daniel grew anxious, realizing the tension between his father and wife was reaching a breaking point, and the air in the house seemed permanently charged with unspoken arguments. Emily remained calm, quietly documenting patterns, noting the father-in-law's overconfidence. She recognized that his pride made him blind to warnings, and that his actions, though seemingly harmless, were sowing seeds of discord. She made small, strategic interventions, guiding Daniel to act as mediator, softening potential confrontations. Without directly challenging Mr. Harrison, the father-in-law, oblivious to the subtle maneuvering, was certain he held the reins. He underestimated Emily's intelligence and patience, thinking her quiet demeanor was a sign of submission. But every ignored warning, every unheeded suggestion, was another piece of the puzzle that would soon reveal the consequences of his arrogance. One evening, while discussing the family's finances, Mr. Harrison made a remark so revealing it exposed the first signs of his potential downfall. Emily noticed immediately, her mind racing with calculations. How could one man's pride unravel so much so quickly? Can Daniel bridge the widening gap before disaster strikes? Keep watching, because the first cracks in control are about to widen dramatically. The overreach. Mr. Harrison's sense of authority escalated into overreach. Confident in his judgment, he decided to take charge of the family's investment plans, completely ignoring Emily's expertise. He signed documents, made calls, and rearranged priorities, believing that his decisions were final and unquestionable. Daniel, uneasy, attempted to intervene but was gently rebuffed by his father, leaving him frustrated and anxious. Emily watched silently, her mind analyzing every action. She understood that overconfidence often precedes mistakes, and she prepared for the inevitable. Every overstep was a signal, a warning that pride was blinding him. The father-in-law's focus on control made him careless, overlooking crucial details in his rush to dominate. Tension reached its peak during a family meeting where Mr. Harrison presented his plans as flawless. Emily, maintaining her composure, subtly pointed out inconsistencies, careful not to provoke confrontation. Daniel, sensing the storm, stayed silent, but the cracks in Mr. Harrison's facade were now visible to everyone present. And in that moment, the stage was set. His final mistake was looming, and the consequences of unchecked arrogance were becoming unavoidable. Will he recognize the danger in time, or has he already sealed his fate? Stay tuned, because the coming events will shock even the most composed observers. The first consequence, it happened quietly at first. Mr. Harrison's decisions began to backfire, small. At first, a missed opportunity, a miscalculated investment, but the effects multiplied. Emily's subtle interventions prevented immediate disaster, but the father-in-law was forced to confront results he had never anticipated. His pride made him stubbornly deny any error, yet the evidence was undeniable. Daniel tried to mediate, expressing concern for both his father and wife. Mr. Harrison, defensive, lashed out, blaming Emily's interference for perceived failures. Emily, calm but resolute, reminded herself that patience and strategy would prevail. She let him believe he retained authority while quietly maneuvering to contain the damage. The father-in-law's confidence wavered slightly, though he refused to admit it. Friends and associates began noticing the key missteps, subtly undermining his credibility. For the first time, he sensed that his control was slipping, but his ego prevented him from seeing how deeply the situation had already shifted. And as Emily prepared the next step in her careful plan, the audience realizes that his final mistake is no longer a potential threat. It is becoming reality. Can pride be corrected, or will it lead to irreversible consequences? Keep watching, because what happens next will be the turning point of the entire story. The breaking point, the tension, finally reached its breaking point. A critical financial decision made by Mr. Harrison, meant to showcase his authority, completely backfired. Assets were mishandled, opportunities lost, and the family's trust was shaken. Daniel stood silently, torn between loyalty and the undeniable truth. Mr. Harrison's face reddened with frustration, a mixture of anger and disbelief. Emily, composed, seized the moment. She offered practical solutions, guiding Daniel and subtly showing the father-in-law that control alone was not wisdom. She had anticipated this moment, understanding that patience and observation would allow her to protect her family while letting him face the consequences of his actions. The father-in-law struggled to maintain composure. For the first time, he realized that his decisions made with such confidence had created chaos. His final mistake had truly arrived, leaving him exposed in a way he could never have imagined. As the room grew silent, everyone processed the fallout. The audience feels the weight of the consequences and the inevitability of change. How will Mr. Harrison respond to this challenge? Can humility replace arrogance, or is it too late? Don't look away, because the resolution is about to unfold. The realization Mr. Harrison retreated to his study alone with his thoughts, the weight of his actions pressing down on him. For the first time, he reflected deeply on his arrogance, his need to control, and the fractures it had caused. Emily and Daniel worked together to repair the family's stability, their quiet teamwork contrasting sharply with the father-in-law's internal struggle. He realized that true authority comes from respect, not fear, and that pride, when unchecked, blinds even the most experienced. The realization was painful but necessary. He began to understand the wisdom in Emily's patience, her strategic foresight, and her ability to maintain family unity, even when challenged. Though the damage could not be entirely undone, this moment marked a shift. The father-in-law's perspective changed, and he slowly accepted guidance from those he had once dismissed. And as he prepared to face his family again, viewers are left wondering, can redemption follow pride's downfall? Will relationships mend, or will scars remain? Stay tuned, because the final chapter brings resolution and reflection. Resolution and reflection. In the final chapter, the family gathers once more, this time with a cautious but hopeful atmosphere. Mr. Harrison, humbled but still proud, addresses Emily and Daniel, acknowledging his mistakes without fully surrendering his dignity. Emily, calm and gracious, accepts the gesture, understanding that pride and humility must now coexist. The son smiles, relieved that the storm has passed, and the family begins rebuilding trust and balance. The father-in-law, though wiser, is left to reflect on how a single mistake driven by arrogance and overconfidence can ripple through lives. The lesson is clear. Control without empathy is fragile. Patience and strategy are powerful, and every action carries weight beyond the moment. As the camera pulls back, viewers are reminded that family dynamics are complex, and that even the most confident can falter. The father-in-law's final mistake becomes a story of reflection, growth, and the enduring strength of unity, when guided by wisdom rather than ego. The question lingers in the audience's mind: what would they do if pride blinded them, and could they recognize a final mistake before it's too late? As the story comes to an end, the room falls into a quiet stillness filled with the weight of lessons learned and mistakes acknowledged. Mr. Harrison sits alone for a moment, reflecting on how his pride and insistence on control nearly tore the family apart. He realizes that wisdom is not in commanding others, but in listening, observing, and understanding the consequences of every choice. Emily and Daniel exchange a subtle knowing glance, a silent acknowledgement that patience, strategy, and respect have preserved their bond. The father-in-law's final mistake, once a looming threat, has become a turning point, a reminder that even the strongest egos can falter, and humility often comes too late to prevent pain, but just in time to inspire growth. As the family moves forward, a sense of cautious hope fills the air, proving that relationships, though tested, can endure when guided by insight and compassion. And for viewers, the lesson lingers: pride can blind, control can backfire, but wisdom, patience, and understanding can heal even the deepest rifts